Ya
están grabando?
Dale, dale una.
Okay, you can start any moment you want.
So what is Google Dream? Google Dream is basically a child of Google, obviously, and what it is it's a neural network, which is basically a computer system that is modeled off of a human brain. So what it was is it's an artificial intelligence experiment that uses the neural network to figure out different things. So in this case, what the Google programmers were trying to do was to sort of understand how and why computers work, how they function, just to understand the concept behind how computers think and understand everything. So if you have ever used Google Dream or Google Images, you kind of actually know a little bit about Google Dream already. So if you don't know, Google has reverse image search, and you can search for things through basically just images if you search on Google. And the great thing about the image search is you can basically backtrack it. So you can put a picture in there, and then Google will basically go through every single picture that it knows in its database and tell you, oh, we think it's this, or we think it's that picture. So if you were to post reverse Google search a picture of a dog, it would say, is that a dog? And is it this specific picture that we see in our previous searches? So that being said, the Google researchers actually use the same technology to reverse that. So if you were to give it an image from Google Dream, it would bring back a version of that picture that Google will sort of guess of what it is, but it would do it to every single area on the picture itself. So for example, let me show you here. Okay, so what is this? So let's say you were to put an image of, let's say, a mountain. Okay, and this example specifically, Google, the image engine, the neural network, thinks it's actually basically said, oh, hey, this looks like a gazebo. And so it actually puts a gazebo on top of that picture that you originally put on there and changes the picture. So another example we have here is a picture of a sunflower. And when the sunflower's processed through Google Dream, what comes out is a picture of a bird. And so Google Dream is saying, oh, that kind of looks like a bird. Is that a bird? And they put an image of a bird on top of that. And here is another example. So it's sort of reminiscent of, you know, when children or when you as a child would go to look at the sky and see, you'll look at clouds and sort of see what that is. So, you know, you can do kind of fun things with it. You can put a picture of a cloud on there, and so then it will look at all the subtle nuances of the pixels and try to figure out what that is. So some fun things that people have been doing is they've been processing it multiple times, to the point where you process it 10 times and there's many levels of pictures within the original picture. So why did they do this? So the technicians at Google wanted to see basically how a computer decides what it decides. Even though they created the coding for that, they still want to see how the actual computer decides certain things. And this sort of goes more into artificial intelligence. So to further understand artificial intelligence and to understand just generally AI technologies or artificial intelligence. So the question is, like, where is that going to lead us, and like, where is this step leading us? So with this, you can sort of see how computers function, how they think, basically. And the thing I love about this is that artists have sort of taken advantage of this experiment that was originally purely scientific, and they created this beautiful thing, this artwork, this very low tech in the sense of people have created this coding or moved this coding onto the web, so you can basically upload an image and it can output the Google Dream version of that image. So it's wonderful in its sort of spontaneity and its unpredictability. And so the question I ask is, like, is this going to last? Like, is this sort of kind of art medium going to last? Or is it just sort of fleeting fad? It sort of became viral for a little bit, and people seem to like it a lot, but the question is, are artists really going to use this beyond sort of a fine, quick little thing that they're sort of passively using? And who does this benefit? Does it benefit the scientists more or the creative professionals? Now, as far as the creative professionals go, the question is, how can you use this in other mediums? These beyond pictures. How can we go beyond the picture aspect of things? Because we can go beyond the picture aspect of things with possibly video and or use this processing through that. So then, as far as art goes, when science and art sort of combine, what's created? And the great thing about this is it's sort of a combination of science, tech, and art that is easily accessible for everyone to use, to the point where it's sort of like a hybridization of everything. And it can lead us, it's obviously already led us to things like, the medium of new media, which is what my master's degree is in. And kind of combining different mediums with computers and everything. So beyond that, I wanted to sort of talk about the idea of humans and technology coming together and creating. So question that says, an high-tech tool, low-tech could be focused on this person. Yes, I'm talking
And so what's kind of maybe like the bare minimum aspect of the Google Dream, but in the hyped technology algorithms, what is the application flow?
Okay, like, so how does it like actually function as far as the coding goes?
Actually.
Well, okay, so obviously, like, artificial intelligence is super advanced and super high tech in that sense, but it sort of brings us to like, how can we use high tech into like a low tech technology, and that's sort of what Google Dream is. It was originally very much like a high tech experiment, which was used in a very tech manner to create different things. And that's sort of fascinating because it's sort of hybriding high tech, low tech, and outputting something that's very easily accessible. So I wanted to sort of, where does this lead us as far as technology and art and everything? So there's this thing called singularity, which is basically the prediction by someone Ray Kurzweil. He's basically an American author, computer scientist, inventor, and futurist. And so he predicts that in the future, there's this thing by around like 2045 or so, there's going to be this singularity of tech and humans. So people are going to be sort of combined with technology. And so in a sense, we become one with computers, and we become like the same as computers, and brought in our powers for in whatever capacity. So when that ends up being the case, what kind of art are we going to create? There is computer systems now that sort of create art as it is, and there are ways to how do you say, like, get computers to create art, but we're sort of independent of that computer art. So when this does happen, which it's going to happen eventually, it's already kind of starting to happen with things like Google Glass, and but this is going to be like sort of integrated computer systems within humans. But then it's sort of going to perpetuate that cycle of putting art with technology and create very interesting things. So if we were to get to this point, would we still paint? Would we paint? Would we make simple objects with this very advanced systems behind us? And how would it change things? Like, if we were to create a painting of a simple object as like just an everyday normal human with this super high technology, would we do something very simple and create very simple objects, or will we continue doing like something that we've always been done even without it? And I'm sort of fascinated by the idea of combining that technology and also using just antiquated technology to create things. And that's why with Google Dream, it's really interesting because I feel like it's sort of the onset of both artificial intelligence, art, creativity, and sort of creating computers to think creatively. But then again, you can also argue that computers aren't really thinking creatively. It's more of a
Sorry, the sound is out.
Okay, so
Okay, perfect.
this is basically the birth of man. I believe it's birth of man, yeah. The Sistine Chapel. As deep trains, basically version of that. Let me see if I have any questions on the system. I can talk more, and I'll talk more about this. So, no, on that. Okay, so the question is, I guess I'll read it out loud. I'm a photographer. That's sort of my more overriding skill, but I sort of know a bunch of different things. Game design. Question. Do you have any interest in partnering with people that create algorithms to create your own pattern generation in photos, such as Google does? That's what sort of I wanted to do. Is I wanted to work with the code myself because it's an open source code. It's code in Python, which is a programming language. And because Google actually made it open source, so what that means is you can basically access the code, you can do as you wish with it, and you can tweak it at will. So I was very interested in this because I wanted to basically create different versions of Google Dream, different ideas of it, to make it into many different alterations. And because I'm a photographer, I've actually put some of my photos through and was trying to figure out some sort of way to make it into an interesting project that I'm sort of still working on right now. So the other question is, okay, so what output would be fascinating to see as far as something different from what Google Dream is already doing by generating animals and dogs and birds out of context? Would you want mine to look different? I don't know. I think I'm more so fascinated not necessarily by the specific output of it. I think I'm more interested in the idea of what it actually does, which is the thinking process. I'm sort of fascinated by the idea that Google has these millions and millions of images and just very quickly can just think of something and realize what something is. So, it's very interesting to see what it could end up being as far as like the more it's tweaked. Like it could be, so as of right now, Google Dream sort of tends to steer towards like kind of simple things like I said before, gazebos or birds or dogs or eyes. Actually, it's sort of fascinating by eyes. But that even is sort of the interesting thing too. Is like, why is it? It's sort of like put in there as things it thinks it is, but it could be interesting to see what other things it could see. So as far as the code goes, yeah, I don't know. trying to think of how would I create it with my photography. Could be something that's, I mean, potentially you could make it into something that could actually go into a computer system if you just mess with the camera setup itself. So it can always constantly create images in real time. Now the only problem with this, or I guess the only stipulation that this has is that it mostly needs, not mostly, it does need the internet basically to work, because it uses the, like I said, the Google image search. So that's one sort of like, I guess, hindrance. But see if there's anything else I can see as questions on this. I think there's another question. Okay, so one of the questions is, can we do the same with audio and video files? Okay, so yes and no. Okay, so that's actually one of the things I was considering doing. So as you know, video is 24 frames per second, and theoretically that's 24 pictures, or not theoretically, it's 24 pictures in 1 second, and you could potentially create a, you can run each of those pictures through Google Dream and output a video. So I was going to do this with a video, and I was going to create basically a video that's fully in Google Dream and see what happens. Because it would be such a sort of laborious, tedious process of doing 24 frames per second, and I potentially wanted this to be, you know, like around a 5-minute video. What I'm like gearing towards doing is trying to figure out a way to change the coding so I can potentially make a streamlined process to where it can actually alter multiple images at one time. So I'm in the process of doing that. As far as audio goes, I do not know of anything that does that as of yet through in like the sense of Google Dream aspect, because it's more of a visual medium as opposed to an audio medium. But as far as that goes, you could also argue that synthesizers and different synthesizers and like adjusters are sort of very similar to that, where you can sort of tweak sound and combine sound together. So the next question I see here is, with interest in the thinking process, what about the visual of computers that can take whole rooms to express the concept of images that are done? So let me see that again. So what are the I'm not sure if I understand that question.
As an installation.
As an installation with the interest of
The concept of the amount of computing that.
Is that a possible thing to do?
Something you would be interested in to create some sort of installation that conveys how much
processing power it takes.
how much is being like, yes. Even though we see them with computers that are very compact, and just to convey the concept of just how much computing is being done. Is that something that interests you, like the history of the computer? Using that as a visual form?
Well, I mean, so basically the question is along the lines of like to visualize how computers process and to sort of show how computers process and the level, I guess, of complexity of it. But I guess that all depends on what computer you end up using. Because computers today, you can potentially have a very tiny Arduino like machine that does that. That could be smaller than like a cigarette box, you know. But I guess it could be interesting, sort of move this high tech into like low tech medium and sort of output it out again, which could be really cool. Just what happens. I was also actually considering doing this art project that I actually haven't just got around to doing, of combining, basically taking the same picture hundreds of different ways, but with different things. So as low tech as I can get, as high tech as I can get, because it's gotten to the point now where we're sort of overwhelmed with the amount of tech that we have. That I think it's more interesting about how we can combine everything. I'm sort of fascinated by the new technologies, but it's also interesting to see what old technologies are still sticking around. So I wanted to create this project where I sort of used all of these high-tech, low-tech things and sort of try to discover what's the difference, what's holding up, how does it look and not look. So another question is, so Google Dream images are kind of psychedelic. Do you think about the notion of perception as well? And so I guess the question is referring to, do I think about that as like, so I guess like, okay, so I think it's what it's saying is, so the images are sort of psychedelic in the sense of they're sort of like basically out there, and do I think in that sort of perceptive nature as well? Is that what I'm thinking I'm understanding here as far as that question?
Let's just take that one more time.
So the question is, Google Dream images are kind of psychedelic. Do you think about the notion of perception as well?
I mean, I think they can go in two different directions. So thinking about like atmospheric perspective, I guess is because it can be like clouding the atmospheric perspective because it's covering it with animals. But I think too, maybe it's talking about perspective because it's just one filter, possibly.
Well, I mean, I think it's. So I guess that goes back into the question of like how it's actually perceiving things and how it's viewing things, which I think is definitely relates to I would say myself, and one of the reasons I am sort of fascinated by it is it is really interesting to see and fun, frankly, to see what it's getting out of what. And I guess in my own life, I always try to see things differently. I guess that's how all artists are, is they try to look at things that are sort of everyday and ask themselves, how can we see this differently? And this is why I love that, because it's just one of those things that sort of raises the bar in a sense of saying, hey, here's what this does, but it's not humans doing it anymore, reference computers, but then doing it in a very simple process. The coding itself is very simple, although which can easily be tweaked. So yeah, I think it's great in the sense that it's like sort of creating a computer that is artistic. So another question is, what output would be fascinating to see as far as something different from what Google Dream is already doing? It's a good question. I think what I want to see is something that's done in real time. So one of the things I'm fascinated by is synesthesia. And actually a lot of artists have actually been interested in, so synesthesia. Let's first answer what that is. So synesthesia is when neural networks in your brain basically misfire, or actually they don't misfire, they fire in different directions in the way they should be. So let's say if you were to see the number 1, you would taste lemon in your mouth. So basically what's happening, or like let's say you hear a classical song and then you end up seeing the color blue. Now, a lot of folks that have synesthesia